Over the years working with couples, one of the things that I found is many times couples will come to me, sometimes after they've seen several different counselors, and not understand why they can't fix and get things right. So, if a counselor or a coach is not working with you to help you to understand the brain, you're going to miss a whole lot of really important information that affects your relationship as well. So, along the way, this workshop is designed to help you learn some of those things that could be affecting your relationship that you may not even realize, and then learn tools to use to help you to gain better um, skills in the relationship, better love, better excitement in the relationship, and fun. And that's what relationships really are supposed to be, and a better understanding on differences that you each bring into the relationship. So, a couple other things that I want people to understand is people who have been in as a first responder in the police field, or they have been in the military or fire department, or even EMTs, or individuals who work even in the counseling field, who are in high stress kinds of careers every day, can actually affect their relationship just because of the careers that they are in if they're not understanding how to reset those things. And so along the way, we're also going to talk a little bit about that, is how to reset and be able to separate career from family life and excitement. Also, some of the worst and best things that you can do in your relationship is one of the areas that we're going to cover. We're going to cover the difference in men and women's brains, and nutrition and mental health, which can also play a huge part in how we experience and what we talk about and what happens in our relationships. Communication skills that we probably never even heard of or used before, but that can be amazing when you learn those tools along the way. And stress management tools. Every couple needs to implement certain stress management tools. Either that, or they will end up creating patterns in their life where it's ongoing, the same stressors over and over and over again. And then after a while, you find that you feel like maybe this person isn't for you. Maybe this relationship isn't for you. Maybe it's your fault if you're a first responder and you're thinking that maybe something's going on because you can't get that. That's not necessarily true. It takes two people to have a relationship, and it takes two people to work on having a good relationship. So, one of the things I often say when I worked with first responders in an individual basis is letting them know that if I only work with them, we're actually not solving the problem completely. Because if you've been married to somebody for any length of time, you create certain patterns in the relationship. And if you don't work with the couple together as a whole as well, then those patterns can get re-triggered and rewired. And we'll talk about that along the way. And also how to change and get out of those cyclic bad patterns that get you into those stressful conflict and into some great, amazing, wonderful relationship tools that really are easy, simple, and it doesn't take a lot of time to implement. So follow me along and we'll go to the next part. I'm excited that you're here and doing this journey with me. So, what is extremely important to know is that these are some of the things that affect the brain and affect relationship. One is physiology. Two is biology. Three is reflexes. Four are behaviors. Five, conditioned responses. And six, developmental responses. So we're going to talk about some of these things along the way and how to identify them easier so that they don't wreak havoc on your relationship. The other is the fact that you're dealing with another person in the relationship. So it's not just your brain, your physiology, your biology. it is this other person's too. So I love it. One time I heard speakers talk about the fact that it's really like you have two people in a relationship, and I believe this was Dr. Gottman who talked about this. You have two people in a relationship, and each of them have a quarter. So if you flip one quarter 50% of the time, you might be on the same page. If you flip two quarters, 25% of the time, you might be on the same page, right? So there's a lot more variables that can take place there. So remember, when you're dealing with your relationship, you really want to learn more so that you're able to identify ways that you can make a better relationship instead of just going off of some of the things that, like they say, oh, you just need to talk about it more. Maybe you just need to talk more. Maybe you just need to talk more. Actually, research has shown that sometimes talking more is not what we need to do. Sometimes we need to do some other tools and skills. So I want to help you learn about those along the way so that you can have a better relationship. Every relationship is difficult, no matter what relationship you're in. Everybody has things. I mean, nobody has a perfect relationship and that never has any flaws or problems, right? So that's important to remember, first off, that we're all human. We're all going to have problems and flaws in relationships. However, when you look at first responders, police officers, military, and anybody who works in those high intense career fields, you're not only dealing with the relationship itself, but you're also dealing with the fact that this person goes out on a regular basis dealing with high stress situations and then comes back home. And if they don't learn some tools and their spouse doesn't learn some tools for them to work on to build that relationship differently, it will create problems in the relationship. It can be exhausting for an individual who is going out every day in those stages and those high stress situations, and then finding themselves going home, and then at home feel like that person is not able to relate to them, or maybe they can't tell them what's going on because it's something that they can't even talk about. So you have to understand that some of these things are created just because of the type of job that a person has. So during this workshop, I'm really specifically going to talk about those kinds of things and how they affect relationships and give you some tools, because I want you to have a great relationship. I want you to understand that you can change some of these patterns and have a great relationship. So keep following along with me, and we'll talk about some things that will help you along the way. So what are specific struggles that military, police, and firefighters deal with? Well, hypervigilance, which is extremely important, right? You need to be able to be aware of your surroundings at all times. And is something going on over here? What's going on? Those little things get triggered over and over again. Whether you're a police officer or prior military or a first responder, I was in the military myself 12 and a half years, you learn to pay attention to certain things. And you go through training that sets your mind up in this wired system where every day, over and over again, every day, over and over again, you are looking for potential dangers. Well, how good is that going to be when you go home and you're still wired and fired looking for potential dangers? So this is why you hear people sometimes say that, they're just edgy all the time. I can't ever get them to relax. Well, yeah, of course, because many times nobody's taught them good, healthy tools to learn how to separate their job time from their career time that keeps them hypervigilant. And so one of the things that I really want you guys to learn and work on is some of those kinds of tools. The other is shift work. Shift work is horrible for the brain. There's actually research that says people who do shift work, it creates such anxiety, stress, and depression. It's really tough on the brain. And so knowing that those things can affect and make relationships more difficult. On call. So 1 minute you're home and enjoying family and the kids, and the next minute you get called out. Again, that back and forth, variable types of stress that's created in the brain. And there's some research that says when you have variable types of stress, it actually gets stuck in the brain more intense. So those create certain patterns if we don't learn to deal with them unconsciously that get wired and fired much quicker. Use of force and anger to the point to get their point across, right? So no police officer or military person or even firefighter goes up somewhere and just goes, oh, could you please do this? Now they do sometimes, obviously, right? But there's a lot of times where they have to use a type of force, and it's not necessarily a physical force as much as it is a demeanor force, right? And sometimes it's that being, puffing the shoulders up, being ready for whatever might be coming at them. Not because they're bad people, not because they're, trained to be bullies, but because they have to be centered and ready for whatever comes at them. And if they're not ready, then obviously that could get them off kilter too and could cost somebody their life, right? So how well does that work in a relationship? So using that puffed up stance with their spouse or their kids, or yelling or using a higher tone in their voice, how well is that going to help in a relationship? And so I want to help teach you tools, but I also want you to understand that part of that is what we call culture. And the military is a culture, police area is a culture, firefighters, all the first responding areas are cultures. And when I say cultures, it's like they have their own language that they speak. They understand what those things mean with one another. When you come up with somebody else who's been in the military, it doesn't matter what branch of service, there's certain things that they know and understand and process similar. And so we call that a culture. Well, cultures, they create a particular way of responding, and they create a particular way of encouraging one another. They joke with one another in ways where some people might see as more inappropriate, because sometimes it's ways for them to get off stress, and we'll talk about that a little bit along the way as well. But sometimes the things that you see done within a group of people who are in those same career fields, you may go like, gosh, I don't understand that. That doesn't even make sense. Why are you doing that? Or why are you being like that? This isn't the person that I know or understand. Or you may feel like even offended by something they do or say. But please try to understand that sometimes these are cultural things that they have developed together or with one another just to help them survive in high intense situations. So, like I said, we'll talk more about that along the way. Many times they have to detach from their emotions, right? So you can't go to a stressful situation and, something. So say for instance, just got into a fight with your spouse. You can't go to a stressful situation to somebody's car or somebody's house and take that with you. Vice versa, right? So they go from one stressful situation to the next situation. So they can't take those kinds of emotional things with them. So they learn to detach from their emotions. Many times, what we find is they detach from the positive emotions much more than the negative emotions like anger or anxiety, especially anger. Anger is used usually to give them that feeling of confidence. So sometimes they push all these other things aside, like, they just maybe rescued a child out of child abuse, or, something worse. Maybe they had to respond to a child who had passed away, or many other horrible, detrimental things that they had to respond to. Sometimes it's even a buddy that got killed in the line of active duty, and all of a sudden we're asking them to please put all that stuff aside and be back present with us. Well, that's not the way it works. What they do is they learn to detach from those emotions so that they can be present. And then after a while, that detaching creates problems too. So we're going to talk about how to help heal that and work on that a little bit as well. I truly encourage people, if you have a lot of detachment, to get into some type of counseling or coaching that can help with that, because that in itself can create a lot of difficulty. After a while, when you create those walls, it's really tough to be able to get into even good feelings sometimes. I've literally worked with people who've said, like, I can remember what it was like when I had our first child, but I don't remember what it feels like. Or I can remember the day of our wedding, but I don't remember what it feels like. And they'll talk about not being able to remember good times in their life or good emotions. Well, that comes from them separating themselves over and over again from their emotions. Again, not intentionally, not because they're bad people, but because that's what they have to do in order to stay present and not emotional over and over again in a severe situation. So obviously, you have a person who goes up to rescue a child, um, you know, and maybe that child has severe torturing kinds of abuse patterns that you can see on that person. Isn't going to be able to just show their emotions and let that person, let the people around them see that, gosh, this really is bothering me, it hurts me, and I'm tearful or whatever, right? You can't do that. So you have to tuck those emotions down, tuck those emotions down, tuck those emotions down. So that's what I'm talking about with learning to detach. Other issues that first responders deal with is sleep issues and sometimes nightmares. Sometimes when individuals go through intense and crisis types of situations, they end up having nightmares. So just knowing that sleep difficulties and patterns, and we're going to talk a little bit about that along the way and how to help work on a different area to get you in a better place for that. And then, of course, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but privacy and confidentiality. There are times, because it's an ongoing case or because it's something that, for whatever reason, they can't talk about, that's going to happen. And so when that happens and occurs, it's just that feeling of like, that disconnectedness again. There's certain things they can't share, and so it feels almost like secrets sometimes. And then being a dangerous field, right? So they are always at risk to lose their life when they're out in the field in those first responder type places, right? So knowing that they're in survival mode all the time affects the body, affects the brain, and can affect relationships. But the great thing is there's lots of things that you can do about it to make that better. And I actually created this workshop several years ago, and I've added to it here and there. And I actually, when I first created it for spouses and their families. And then I created it for counselors, because I wanted counselors to understand, and so started teaching those kinds of workshops. And then sometimes I'll do workshops in the community for free for first responders, and sometimes we'll do couples workshops and sometimes just individual. But I wanted to give this to you guys. This is my gift to you, because I want you to know you can have a great relationship. And again, I'm not saying that you don't need to do some counseling, but hopefully at least some of these things will get you talking, learning some new tools and skills that you can move forward and help you to hopefully build some more healthy and good and positive things in the relationship. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to cover everything that I normally would in every workshop that I do, but I want to cover enough things that helps you get into a good place and space in your relationship. Please feel free to reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. Not only being a spouse of a police officer, but being in the military myself, and my spouse was in the military as well. and knowing the things that I know and that I worked with for years, I just want to get this out to individuals to help them to get in a better place in space. So please let me know if these things were helpful and other things that you would like for me to talk about along the way too. So you can reach me at WarriorHeartxo, that's WarriorXo at yahoo.com or gmail.com. So both of them are mine, and if anybody wants to know, so Warrior Heart, XO is a command center. So a lot of people go, oh, how cute, X's and O's, hugs and kisses. But it's actually in the military, your XO is your command center. So Warrior Heart XO is where you can find me. You can follow me on Instagram. Sometimes I get posts out and sometimes I don't. But again, this is more about, I just want to be able to put this out. This was a workshop that I've done for free many times before, and so I wanted to get this into the hands of as many police officers, firefighters, first responders that I can to help you along the way. And so please feel free to send this to someone else as well. I just pray that these help change your relationship in some amazing positive way, and that's my goal and hope and love. Blessings to you, and I'll see you on the next workshop.